Hello, and welcome to Nobody Asked Us, presented by TCS. This is Kara Goucher, and I'm joined by Des Linden. Des, how you doing?
I'm doing great. That was such an enthusiastic intro. I loved it.
Crushing
This is getting better every time we step up to the plate.
This is getting better. I mean, I feel like we know what we're doing almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
Almost. Well, today we want to talk about the state of track and field. But first, I know everybody wants to know, how is your hand?
It's good. It's hanging on, if you will. No, the stitches are out. The scars, it's pretty, I think it's gross, but I think it probably looks pretty normal now. Yeah, right? Like, and the full, like mostly full range of motion. I got to work on my thumb. Like, I'm just going to use this as an excuse for bad hair days because when I tie my hair, like I can't really use the rubber band that well.
So do you have any pain in that hand when you're moving it?
Not really. Like there's a little bit when I'm like, I guess, flexing the thumb outwards. I don't know. It's fine. Like, it's fine. It's all like, look at the range of motion. We'll have to get the thumb to be able to move a little bit better.
I can't believe how quickly that healed up.
Yeah. Well, it's been about a month.
Well, it doesn't seem like that long, but also, okay, I need to know, when they were taking the stitches out, was it like pinchy? Was it pulling?
Yes. That's actually a funny story because I went in and it was this very young girl and I took off the bandage. She's like, we're taking some stitches out today. I took off the bandage and she looked at it and she's like, oh, I'm like, great. She's like, I usually only see like 4 or 5 stitches. I'll be right back. And I was like, oh no. She's like, I've never seen these type of sutures before. And I usually only do a couple at a time. So she didn't leave a lot of confidence with me as I was sitting there. And then she was taking about and she's like, yeah, sometimes like it starts to grow to the skin starts to attach to the suture and like it can kind of hurt. And there was only a couple spots that were really bad, but she was like, yeah, it's really hard to like get to this inside your thumb spot. So if it hurts, let me know. And then I told her a few times, like, yeah, that's like really pulling. And she's like, yeah, okay.
Just grin and bear it. It's got to come out.
It's like, there's not much else. I'll tell you, but I'm not sure that there's much else we can do here. Rip.
Wow. That's so intense. So are you in PT for it? Like, are you actually doing exercises and meeting someone?
No. So there was no nerves and no tendons. So they were just like, all right, just use your hand as normal. But knowing like what I know about scar tissue and like range of motion and stuff like that, I'm like, I've been using like the scraping tool on the scar, and just like trying to move my hand a lot, but not overdo it all at once. So common sense stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I feel like that could be an episode of Runners We Think We Know Everything.
Yeah.
You know, like Adam has all these anatomy books and he'll be like telling the doctor what's happening. And I'm guilty of that myself, instead of being like, you went to medical school. I'm hurting here. Can you tell me what's going on? No, we know. Like, you're like, oh, I'm going to use that scraping tool. I'm going to get that out.
For sure.
But you're right.
Right. Of course. Even if I'm wrong, I'm probably right in my own world, in my own mind.
Totally.
So that's exciting for me. But I'm going to flip this back on you. And you knew this was going to come up. But the Instagram post yesterday, the incredible dance moves, was that choreographed ahead of time? Is this just your dance style? I need more information on this. And you can even plug the sponsor.
Okay. Well, I had
a paid ad, but go for it.
There was a shoe update released yesterday by Ultra, the Torin 7. And we were asked to post about it. And I was like, I'm going to make a dance. And I literally told Adam, in 10 minutes, you have to record me. So I went up in front of my bathroom and I made up a quick little dance. And then we went downstairs and it was a one and done take. And we haven't hung out enough for you to see this side of me, but I'm weirdly cocky when it comes to dancing.
There was like an energy, a confidence, like I'm going to,
yeah, no,
one take, I'm crushing this. Okay.
So Chris, our editor, has seen me at like an actual dance party. I'm like a completely different person. And in fact, last Friday, I was visiting some friends who still live in Colorado, but moved away to a different town. And they took me to Adam and I, to this band called That 80s Band.
Love an 80s band.
And I showed up and we were like way in the back. There were hundreds of people there. And by the time it was over, I was in the front row high-fiving the band.
Yes.
So yeah, I love to dance so much. I'm not good, but I don't care. And so, yeah, that was just a little taste of what someday you and I will go out and you'll get to see the full fledged, like it's really obnoxious. I can't control it. It just comes.
No, it's incredible. I thought for a runner, like you're just like my hips. I don't go lateral. So
Right,
like
right.
if you were going lateral on those steps, we're doing all kinds of movements that would make me sore for a couple days. I saw it, and I'm just coming home from a wedding, so people would be like, "Oh, are you gonna come dance? It's a great band. Are you gonna come dance? Are you gonna come dance?" It's like I will take the last 30 to 45 minutes of this party, and everyone's going to be like close to wasted by then, and I'm going to pace myself, and then right when I'm feeling just about good enough to extend myself, they won't remember any of it, and then I'm going to do like my marching in place where I like kind of move my arms around, and that's my dance effort because I don't go lateral, so I just sort of do the running in place thing.
Well,
and that's what I did.
After your next marathon, I feel like we need to go to a club where early in the night,
okay,
when people remember you were there.
Ooh.
Let's just let it happen. I will say, recording that video, so I made up this little dance, and then the sun was weird, so I was like, well, let's do it coming down the steps. And so it was a one and done take, but as I was going down the stairs, I was like, don't fall.
I thought you were going to be like, you just kept going. And Adam was like, do I stop? Do I keep recording? How long is this?
He was like, wait, I have to do what? And he did a great job because I was like, I'm going to be down on the ground, time my shoot, and then I'm going to jump up and you have to zoom out. He did great. So
it was I thought it was professional.
Oh, great.
Good job.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. So now we know that your hand's doing better and that I like to own the dance floor.
Love it. I
thought it would be cool-ish or interesting, if nothing else, to kind of talk about the state of track and field. You're still in it. I'm in it in a different capacity now, but it would be kind of cool to just talk about it because I feel like there's constantly threads on Twitter about how to make track and field better. What are our struggles? What are our strengths? And so I thought it'd be cool for us to just sort of talk about it and our opinions and what we've witnessed. So the first thing I thought we could maybe talk about,
all right,
and this will tie into all of the other topics, but there was a meet in LA a couple weeks ago, and it was billed as like this meet is going to bring track and field to the United States. It's going to be huge. All the big stars are going to be there. There's going to be great musical, like afterwards a party and all this stuff. And then as the meet got closer, a lot of big stars pulled out. And then, a lot of people had gone there hoping to see certain stars who ended up pulling out and had paid for tickets. And so it just sort of highlighted the challenges that our sport has, right? Where like you can't guarantee everyone's going to be there. The viewership drags when you don't have big stars, and what do we expect out of our stars? So it made me think of this topic in a bigger, more general sense. And so I pitched it to you as an idea. But did you watch any of the track meet in LA?
So funny because you started that and I was thinking of a different meet, the distance-oriented sound running invite. And I was like, yeah, it was amazing star power. And then you saw the video of the crowds. You're like, man, that's a bummer. But it was a different LA meet where the same thing happened. And so that in itself is kind of a problem. Like just getting the word out about these events and, then you're saying with people dropping out. I will say I'm out of track and field. That's okay. I can fully remove myself from track and field. And I think that part of it also makes me less likely to tune in and watch it. I'm not a big TV person anyhow. Like the Diamond League is on today and there's this phenomenal 5,000 meter for the men. And I just like scrolled through the live results and that's like how I'll watch track and field, which is terrible. So I'm not like, if I'm a fan of the sport and that's my medium, like that's already a problem. So I did not turn it on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I did watch it. And I helped write the storylines for the 1500 for Sonia and Paul because I didn't get invited to work the meet. So I did watch it and, it was a good tight package. I thought like it was a good tight meet, but on the distance side, there were some pretty heavy hitters, but on the sprinting side, the people that we think are the next big stars that are going to save track and field, like a Thing Mo or Cindy McLaughlin, Devereaux, they weren't in there.
Right.
And then in the 100, we had Sha'Carri Richardson in the prelim, and then she didn't run the final. And this is not to fault any of these specific athletes, but everybody online was like, that just killed the whole event. So then I'm thinking how could 3 people not being there kill an entire event, right? So what does that say about the way that we're selling the sport and presenting the sport when removing 3 athletes, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, I bought tickets, I'm not even going to go now, or I didn't even watch. Like, what does that say about us as a sport?
Not a lot of depth in entertainment value, right?
Right.
But is it on those athletes? Like, I think, do they do a good job of marketing themselves, or are they very well marketed by the meet?
They're very well marketed by their sponsors, I would say.
Yeah.
They're not huge social media presence people. They are on social, but not hugely. I feel like we have put way too much pressure, specifically on Sydney, because every time she races, everyone just expects a world record. And so then that creates this weirdness of like, if she goes out and runs, pretty good, people are going to be disappointed. And so I feel like she's in a really difficult position. And I think Athing Mu a little bit is headed down that track too. Like every time she steps to the line, everyone expects absolute greatness. And so you can't knock it. You can't set a world record, American record every time you go out there, right? I mean, it's impossible. And so how have we gotten to this point? Is it because they just don't race that much that we expect this greatness? Or is it that we just don't appreciate what it is that they're doing?
Well, do we sell it? We just don't sell the competition aspect enough. And I think like those folks don't really have that great of competition most of the time. So then we've leaned to the times, like how fast are they running? Like, wow me that way. But if you go to storytelling and a win's a win and it's really just a foot race and let's take the time down, like there shouldn't be that pressure really. It should be like a cakewalk for those guys, right? Like,
yeah,
like
totally.
Just go and get your workout in.
And that's what I feel like. I sometimes feel frustrated that we've become so focused on records and times that we forget about just racing and how good just racing is, right? Like, I feel like it's always like, whoa, we're on world record watch, we're on American record watch, instead of just saying, hey, 8 amazing athletes are about to go head to head. Let's see what happens. Let's watch how this develops. Let's see who takes it. Let's see who waits. But we have become so much more hyper-focused on times. I mean, I feel like when I was an athlete, you cared about hitting the Olympic standard. And the rest was like just gravy. You were just trying to get into good races and run hard. And sure, there were people chasing records. Like I remember Shalane went after the 5K record and she tried to lower it one summer and she raced it a few times. But it wasn't the only focus, right? Where I feel like we're so caught up on time now that it sort of has distracted from the richness of what our sport can be, which is just pure competition.
When do you think that shift happened? And like, what's the reason behind it? Because you're absolutely right. That is, I've been calling a race before, and you're like, oh, like Ingebrigtsen so close to this European record, and it's like, who cares? He just won. Like, why are you painting this as a disappointment? But it becomes the focus because they have the pacers, they have the lights. It's like, do you notice like when that shift happened, like for you personally, or just like out like presentation from the sport in general?
Yeah, I do think that time has always mattered to a certain extent. So I don't want to say that time never mattered. We had people in Europe. I remember specifically when Dathan set the American record in the 5K in 2000, I want to say
9.
In 2009. Yeah. And they were going for that record. And there were people, I don't remember what place he was, 3rd, 4th, 5th in that race, but he did get the American record. And so I don't want to say like we haven't focused on it, but I really feel like over the last 5 years, there's been a massive shift. And I don't know if it's because of shoe technology and times we're getting so much faster, but I think it's a double-edged sword because eventually these times, technology will level out, these times will level out. And if we're only ever focusing on these times, like at some point, it's going to level out like it was before. We didn't see American or world or national records every single competition in the past. And now we do. At every single competition, we see some sort of record fall. So it's you can't sustain that though.
And do you think the records, like at some point where you see them so often, it almost dilutes the importance of it? Or now it's like, I don't really like, let me know when the records are all settled and then maybe I'll be interested again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, same. Like Ryan and I have this conversation all the time. He's like, yeah, but records are exciting. I'm like, well, not when they like you expect it. They happen every week. And it's like, well, what does that really mean? Like, are you the best or not? And I think that that's starting to happen where people are getting numb to the records.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to make it the racing interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've talked about this problem with shoe tech before.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it is what it is, right? Yeah. So what I worry about is that I feel like World Athletics has gone all in on focusing on records. And so has the media and everybody that's reporting. And I feel like, sure, it's an exciting time to be a track and field fan now, but eventually it will settle down, like maybe in the next 2 or 3 years. And then what? Now we're left with the same problem we had before, which is like, how do we sell this sport when we don't see a record fall every time someone goes to the line? And that's where I feel like storytelling and just pure head-to-head competition matter. I mean, it's so exciting.
Right. I'm glad you brought up World Athletics because I mean, what do you think of these new time standards? They're absolutely insane. And this is part of why people are going to chase and they're running faster because there's pressure to hit these time standards. But the whole, thought process behind it was like, well, this will create more head-to-head racing. And so we'll have a ranking system. And now you have this like process that's so confusing.
Yes.
So even if you want to highlight the racing, you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, did they get the Olympic standard? Are they going to make the team? Like, even the trials now has gotten muddied. And like, I don't know if that second place finisher is actually making the team or not.
I was calling the men's 1500 with Lee Diffie at the Olympic trials in 2021, and Cole Hawker won the race. And we had to go off air saying, we have no idea if he's going to the Olympics or not. That's because terrible. It was going to depend on his ranking. And it looked promising, but we couldn't say that without confirmation. And I'm not a fan of all of that. So yeah, let's talk about the times and how hard they are. So I just want to say that I won a silver medal at the World Championships in the 10,000, and my PR wouldn't qualify for the Olympics anymore. It's 30:50 is a qualifying time. 30:50. And granted, that's me thinking about what times meant 10 years ago versus now, but still they are so much harder. And that was inevitable at some point because the standards are set based on the last few years of competition and the world leaders. So at some point they were going to get harder and harder. But here we are with these crazy fast times. And I can't remember I know this has happened, but I can't remember the last time where we had no one in the US men's marathon has hit the standard yet. Right?
Right.
I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It just adds like a level of confusion. I think this was probably a little further ahead than we wanted to get, but like there's not much out there about the trials yet. And you got to wonder if they're looking at like, I mean, it's a question for me. Like, are they considering not having a men's trials? Or like, is it just going to be like, let's make sure somebody gets the time first? Or like, what's the holdup for the lack of information about the trials? And then you go like, how do you present this product? A race where it's top 3 make the team? Maybe, we don't really know. Maybe no one's going. I mean, I think they're holding a men's trials, but it's just like, it's such a confusing picture.
It's so confusing. And so there's still no information on the trials. There's a date and a city, right? But there's no course map out. So people don't know what to train for yet, which I feel like is letting the athletes down. They should know because they might be able to sneak in another marathon here that's on a similar terrain before the trials. So I feel like we're failing the athletes there. But wait, where was I going with this? Oh, the qualifying process. So there was a huge long thread a couple weeks ago about it. And even I got lost. It was like the women have unlocked their 3 spots. Right. So the top 3 at the trials are going to the Olympics, but the men haven't unlocked any spots. But did you understand all of that? I found it so confusing.
Yeah, the top 3 for the women, they've been unlocked. But even if you finish top 3, you'd have to under 2:29:30. So it's like there's still a time qualification to it. The men's side, I guess you have to have 3 people in the rankings or 3 people who have hit the time standard, which we have 0 so far. And that will make it so the trial, like the US has 3 spots. And then they can give them to anyone in the this being the top 3 at the trial. Like, so it'd be like last trials, it was like Atlanta became a gold standard race. So as long as you finish top 3, you got enough rankings or whatever clout that you needed to get the spot. So this top 3 unlock would allow the top 3 at the trials to be the 3 spots, assuming you have a different standard, which I don't know what that is. I think it's like 211 or 212. So there's some men who have that, but we don't have the first qualification.
But we don't have any of the spots officially unlocked yet. Right?
You know what? Yeah, no. And you know what this reminds me of? Remember the video 5,000 meters, nothing comes easy?
Yes.
Adam features prominently, and it's like they're at the trials and there's all these cuts of different guys trying to explain it, and nobody has a clue. They're like, so-and-so, the B standard and the A standard. Then if he goes to Europe and chases, but I don't think he's going to have enough time. And then there's a component where you can't chase at this point. It's like, I don't know, we're fans.
It is so confusing. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you were just a person who wanted to follow along and you were reading that Twitter thread last week or 2 weeks ago, you'd be like, what? Wait a minute. We're not sending men to the Olympics? Like, why do I care then? It's so confusing. And I feel like in this weird effort to limit field sizes, we've created this process that's so confusing that we've just lost the purity of it, which in my opinion should just be, and granted, maybe this is controversial, but in my opinion, it's like you should have been in the drug testing pool for a year. And if you finish in the top 3 on that day, good job, you're an Olympian.
The road's wide. Like, we don't need to limit the field size.
Right, right.
Take track out of our road stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because the field side for the Olympics, I was looking it up. I can't remember now. I should have written it down. But it's pretty small. And so I think that's why it's so hard. But why are we doing that? Just like you said, you have the whole road. If every country wants to send 3 people, why do we care?
You're not going to be in the way. Like,
no.
The Paris loop is very accommodating. It's like an out and back. Like, just let them run.
So if you were an American man and you've already run under the standard, but like, let's just say you hadn't, like, what would you be thinking right now? Would you be like, I need to go and get in another race before the trials to make sure to make sure I know I've run that time? Because they're talking about, there's a race being put on this fall, I guess, where people are going to come together and kind of race with each other again, like head to head, and try to pull each other to these times. But, that's like a big effort that you have to plan for, knowing that the trials are not that far after on the horizon. So I just feel like it's a really stressful situation all around, but you're still racing and competing. If you were in their position, what would you be thinking?
I'd be racing, like 100%. There's nothing worse than a person who finishes 4th and is like, oh, I just missed out on the Olympic team. Like, yeah, but you didn't even have the standard. So you really didn't. Like, when you let the first lap go slow, you decided to hope that it came to you in some weird way. And it just doesn't happen that way. I mean, I think the easiest thing, it's like control the controllables. And we say that all the time. Like, what can you control? We can control taking your shot at the time standard. And that's the easiest way to get that off your plate and ease some anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And if 3 men do that, a lot of men will benefit in terms of opportunity. Like, okay, now you have the 3 unlocks for the trials and you have to go perform again. But if everyone's like, I'm just going to sit on my hands and hope someone else does it, then why have a trials?
Yeah. It's really crazy to me. And I know we've talked about this before, but like all of the women just seem to be hitting these standards and all this stuff. And our men aren't. But like Connor Mance ran so well in Chicago. I was shocked where I was like, that didn't open up a spot.
Right.
But it didn't. He didn't place high enough or run quite fast enough.
And I wonder like how much Kipchoge's times are like outliers, but like pushing that standard threshold in just a different space. Like we don't have that equivalent on the women's side to sort of skew things.
Right. But that could be true.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Just making stuff up.
I know. Well, that's fine. I like it.
What would you do? Would you go chase in that scenario, or would you just be like, let someone else do it and I'm going to be fresh for the trials?
If I knew that I was going to be in sub 2:08 pace at the trials, like I was so confident, I might wait. But unless I was like so sure that that was going to happen, like this is a much smaller scale, much smaller. But when I came back from having Colt, I got to run the 10,000 at the US Championships in 2011 because there was a rule that if you had medaled within 4 years, you could run the U.S. Championship. So I didn't have a time and I didn't have a world qualifier. But I was so confident that Shalane, being the front runner, she likes to lead. She doesn't like a tactical race. That's not her thing. She's like, I'm going to make you hurt. And so I was so confident that as long as I kept her within my sights, I would hit the time. And so at that, I didn't risk it and run another 10K. I just ran the US champs and I got second. And sure enough, she pulled me to a time that was well under the standard. But it would have to be so clear like that. Like, oh, the standard's 2:08, but in practice, I'm showing I can run 2:04. But even then, it's a marathon and so much can happen that I would probably be like, yeah, no, I need to run like an early fall marathon, just get it done so that I'm not in the trials. I can be in the moment. And I can be responding to what's happening to me. And I don't have to be like looking at the clock, like, am I keeping it fast enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Then you're teeing up everyone else to
just use you.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got a good point here from Chris chiming in that it's going to be hot and humid. It can be hot and humid in Orlando. You could have a really nice day. It could be perfect there that time of year, but it could also be
miserable
and humid. Do you know if there's any time to chase after? Like, could you theoretically set yourself up to place top 3 and then go, now I'm going to Rotterdam? Or
I actually don't know the answer to that. That would be interesting. I mean, I would assume that there will be some people in the top 3, probably at least one person who doesn't have the standard. Right. I mean, I think that's a very likely scenario. And so what does that look like then? Are they just like, too bad, so sad? Or is it like, okay, well, the Olympics aren't for 6 months. Like you can still go try. I actually don't know. I don't know the answer.
It's a terrible thing. I have to chase a marathon time standard.
I know, that would be so awful. I remember Carrie Tollefson won the 1,500 meter trials in 2004, but she didn't have the standard. And she just like went to Europe and just kept running and running. And finally she hit it. And that was exhausting to follow. And that was a 1,500. So imagine, a marathon time hanging over your head would be terrible.
I was appointed to the Daegu team in that scenario. And it was like, originally they were like, no, you can't chase. And then like no one had it. So they let everyone chase.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think it was Angela Bizzari who was 3rd. And she just like could not get it. And then I was 7th at that race, but I was the next person to get the standard.
Really?
It was super random. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was weird. Yeah.
That again, talking about the state of the sport, we're both 2-time Olympians. When we don't understand it, that's a problem, right? Like you're still competing. You call races on NBC. I don't compete anymore, but I follow the sport very closely. It's like, and I don't understand it. That's a problem.
It is 100%. World Athletics. I hope you're listening.
They don't care. They don't care what we have to say.
Right.
Okay. So another topic, Michael Johnson tweeted last week, why isn't Ryan Krauser as big of a star as Fred Curley or Noah Lyles or Sydney or Athing Mo? And I thought that was an interesting perspective as well. Like he is the best to ever do what he does. And he is so consistent. And so why haven't we latched on to him and his story like we have some of these other athletes? Do you have any thoughts there?
I think that's a great question. And I think it was Trey who was going back and forth with him today or recently. And he was like, he's had more NBC time than most people. So what's the storytelling? Is it just like video of his attempts and that's what we're seeing and we never really get to know Ryan? Or are they doing like the human interest, let's talk about Ryan and not just his throws? And that would be interesting to dig into. And what's his story? Is he just like, hey, I just throw and I don't really talk?
Yeah. I think that he's not super like media hungry. Yeah. But I do remember during Tokyo, his grandfather had died, I believe, and like he was dedicating it to him. So there's a story there. I fell in love with Ryan Krauser. It was actually a meet you were calling. And it was an indoor meet and he threw really well. And then they interviewed him and he goes, well, I haven't even done speed work yet. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Because that is what all distance athletes say until USAs are over. Because then they can't say it there. Because if you haven't done speed work by USAs, you're just dumb, right? And that is like a line straight out of Distance Running 101. Well, I haven't even done speed work yet. And so I was like, who is this guy? I need to know
Yeah.
who this guy is and follow. Like that made me laugh so hard. But
That's a
he's
great
just
line. Sense of humor. I love it.
yeah, yeah. But it was just, it's interesting to think about, like, why do we prioritize some events over others, and how do we make it, I feel like some of the athletes we've been talking about, their sponsors really hype them and do a lot of content about them. I don't feel like I see that with Ryan as much, Ryan Krauser. I could be wrong. I do think that NBC hypes him. And the only reason I think that is because I'm in those meetings, and Trey will go and fight to the death, he and Paul, to promote Ryan Krauser and to get it in. And maybe it's just like the way that the event builds, like we don't see it. We just cut to it randomly and it's like, here he is. Oh, he just threw a world record. But we didn't see like the drama of the buildup or anything like that. But I think that that is a tricky part about our sport, is that there are so many different types of athletes out there and so many different types of events, and you're trying to package it into this little neat window. And it's a huge challenge to like really tell the full story of every event as it's happening.
Yeah. I think one thing that is dramatically different about the field events, particularly the throw, well, all of them, but he's throwing, and how many people can really relate to what that is, what that's like. And they can do a great job with the storytelling, and Paul and Trey do. And like, you get a feel for it, but I'm never going to be like, oh, this has inspired me to go throw stuff around. Right.
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
Where, on the track, it's like, oh, maybe I'll sign up for a 5K, or on the roads, it's so much easier because you can become a fan of people that you're sharing the road with, or you understand that this is like, maybe there's sport versus activity, but it's still right foot, left foot, repeat.
Right.
And so it's the same, where like not a lot of us are going to be like, wow, like I'm going to get into some throwing.
Right. And where would you even do that if you
Right.
wanted to, right? The accessibility there's a huge barrier there.
But the flip side of it is like, think about the NFL, where we have like diehard passionate fans, and I'm a huge Charger fan, but I'm not going to be like, let's go throw around the pigskin. Like, I want to get onto a league where I can play some football. So it can be done.
It can be done.
So it's not really an excuse.
No,
but a lot
it's
of times I argue with myself like this.
I like it. You're just being honest. Yeah, there has to be a way that we can make it connect with people, because you're right. I think that's like one of the reasons why the marathon, like I didn't really get the running community as much till I went to the marathon. Because even in the track, like, yeah, people can go out and on their local track and run around, but we're all running the exact same course, and everybody could run on the same day. And I didn't really understand that till I moved to the marathon. I was like, oh man, like this is a different vibe. Like, these people are going to be starting the Boston Marathon right behind me, or the New York City Marathon, or whatever marathon it is. And that does have a very different feel of like, they really can relate to you because they're actually going to do what you're doing. They're not in this fancy stadium looking down on the athletes. They're actually a part of it. And so that's hard too, to get people to feel it when they like, no one can get on Hayward Field. Like the meet's over. It's not like you can sneak down and run around it, like it's closed off. You cannot touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a problem with track in general. It's just like people can't run on Hayward. Like, you're not trying to get one of the lanes, but you can be on the roads, and you can do that. And you can ask about long runs. But even like the 1500 meters is not something the average runner is going to be like, I'm going to sign up for my 1500.
Right.
I guess road miles.
I remember years ago, Michael Johnson argued that there should be like sprint meets, field meets, distance meets. And at the time I was like, what a jerk. No. But now I'm kind of like, well, maybe, because you could do better storytelling about who the people are, why it matters, give the context, rather than in the middle of the women's steeple cutting to Ryan Krauser throwing the shot.
I fully agree with that idea. I feel like I've said that in the past, but it does sound like kind of a jerk move. Like, everybody fend for yourself. Good luck. But I just think that the storytelling and the packaging of it would be better. It would be done much in an improved way, I think. But then it's like, would track fans still support do you still get support for field events, or do those start to trickle off, and maybe the sprints take all the fans and distance just becomes roads?
I know. I think it's a challenge. I think it's a challenge even in like getting contracts. I feel like field event people have such a hard time getting contracts. And remember you were too young, so was I, but I remember hearing about the days of Bruce Jenner, and he was the best athlete in the world, and the decathlon was like beloved by all. And and I remember the Dan and Dave era and the no height and the pole vault, but he came back later to win a world championship, blah, 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 blah. And we don't really tell those stories. I feel like we romanticized the multis then, but I don't feel like we do as much now, although everyone's really interested in Anna Hall.
Yeah, it's very like likable. A lull in talent. Like we've had phenomenal multi-athletes come through. So, and that should be in a way a connection to the rest of the field events.
Yes.
But the field events in general, like who are the stars like outside of the multis prior? I mean, like in the history of the sport, like who stands out?
Well, I only know like the current, like Valerie Allman. I really like following her. Ryan Krauser, obviously. Mondo in the pole vault. People love him.
Love it.
But then I think about, was it Sergei Bubka before him? He was like the last big pole vaulter that I really knew.
Do you know any field event world records or American records?
I know that Valerie Allman has the American record in the discus, but I have no idea how far it is.
Yeah.
No idea.
Again, it's crazy. We're like, I mean, I didn't even turn on the meet, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not a fan of the sport.
Well, we're both recording this during a Diamond League race. So, I mean, we're allowed to skip the meets here and there. Like we do have other things going on. But yeah, I don't know.
Results. I like to check
results.
I
check over. Yeah, me too. All the time. I obsess over them. But it's just, it's like every time I'm at a competition, all we're talking about is how do we increase viewership? And I feel like until something really changes and we start, and I don't have the answers, so I don't want to be sitting on my soapbox, but we really have to think outside the box. And like I said, when Michael Johnson wrote that, it had to be before COVID even. I was like, what a jerk. He just wants to do away with distance events because he doesn't understand them. But now I'm like, he might have been onto something. Like the distance events, if we could actually show every lap and tell that story. Sorry, I'm laughing because Chris just wrote to us.
I know.
Is that true, Chris? Chris, is that true? He just said, oh my God, Faith Kipyegon just set the world record in the 1500. And I'm actually a little annoyed that you told me that because I wanted to go watch the race later. But
whoa,
3:49:11. Okay, well that's cool. And now we're the biggest hypocrites because we weren't watching it. But
okay, here's a scenario. So we have this on the schedule. We planned this a while out, and what on this event sheet, or like what would have been the thing that we go, you know what, we have to reschedule. This is way too interesting, and I have is it free? Is it beer to pair? Like I'm gonna go to the event and drink beer. I don't think that's it. Like, is it betting? I would have betting on Faith for the world record. That would have been fun, but I don't think that would have been enough for me to be like, let's reschedule. Maybe we could have played it in the background.
Yeah.
I just can't think of the thing that would make me so excited that it'd be like, yeah. I mean, it's also the middle of the week.
Right. I mean, part of what I do is I just record them and usually watch them later. So I'm not even watching them live. I mean, I watched the women's steeple just because my friend was in it and she fell, which sucks because she fell at her first meet too. But it was before, like you said, you and I had this on the calendar and it was before we met. So does this mean that we're bad for our sport?
Probably. But look hey, we're talking about it. And there are a lot of people who don't watch track at all that will listen to this podcast and they'll be like, oh, like a world record in the 1500 meters? It's hot right now. And here we go, talking about time again. Was it an interesting race? I don't know. I didn't even see it. So
we haven't seen it. I'm willing to bet she was way out ahead with the pacemaker that took her through a K, but I haven't seen it. Okay. I will say another thing that I think our sport struggles with, especially in the US, is like lack of transparency. Last year, USATF, someone reported on what people were paid, and the CEO made $3.8 million last year, Max Siegel. And a lot of athletes lost their minds over this, as they should. And instead of sitting down with everybody and like talking about it, he kind of was like, name a gold medalist that's mad at me. And so I feel like that is another reason why our sport struggles, because we have this lack of transparency and we don't have this open dialogue. And so it becomes like complaining rather than coming together and figuring out a solution. But when no one wants to figure out a solution with you, all you can do is kind of complain. Do you remember when that hit the news?
Yeah, it was surprising. I'm like a big, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I'm like, originally when first, like, this has been a story that's been going on for years. I'm like, well, he probably is bringing a ton of money in, and the percentage probably makes sense relative, because probably negotiated a really good deal for himself. And then, but the percentage doesn't make sense. Like,
Right.
this is, it's very skewed. And then you go, well, this deal is like just wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know who did the deal. I don't know what it looks like, but that's a very skewed number.
They were comparing it to like the commissioner of football or basketball, what they make versus compared to the revenue, right? And it was like Max Siegel is just an outlier. And, that's why I thought the LA meet that I watched that you didn't watch because you thought I was talking about a different meet, which was an awesome meet. Distance races are always so fun under the lights. That's why I thought this was big for him, because he talked about, we're going to bring track and field back to the US. We're going to make it really popular. And one of the things I think about, and I'm interested on your take here, is that if we want the sport to be popular and we want people to embrace it, we have to be having track meets all over the US. Like, I'm always like, why are we not just using stadiums all over? And like, if you're a high school or middle school athlete, you're free. You get to come in and you're free. And then we expose the sport to so many more eyes in the US. The stadium in Eugene is the nicest stadium I have ever seen in my life. And I can't even imagine anything that could be better than that. But it's hard to get to Eugene, and it's expensive because the town wasn't built to have a bazillion hotels and restaurants and things like that. So it's hard for people to get there. This one in LA definitely has easier to get to, but it was, people paid for those tickets, but it wasn't packed. Allison Wade from Fast Women tweeted a picture of the Boulder and a packed stadium as it started. And people are saying, yeah, but they ran. That's not really fair. But I was like, but isn't that what we need to do, is think outside the box? Like, maybe that we do have a race that ends at the stadium. Then the stadium opens up. We get fans in, and then the pros come out. Like, why can't we do that all over the place and get more people to care? And you never know who you're going to inspire then, the next generation.
Yeah. I mean, I think exposure is key, and it can't just, we have a ton of fans in Eugene. It's always great. The trials are always great. It's hard to get a ticket, but they're like it's the same people, most likely. So it's got to move around. I think you have to build consistency too. Like, it's really great that our sport is pretty open, and like, I always think about the term elite versus professional, and like who qualifies, who's really, and it's open. The road's open. We can get as many people on it as you want, and you have a chance to beat the best. But for track and field, like, you have to have something consistent to root for. Otherwise, why would you watch? And so if you got similar matchups like a few times a year, and there was a circuit, and it was just like select athletes that are going to go on tour and they're going to race, and then you have people to root for. Because it's like, it's so easy to have the next person who disrupts everything, and you're like, I don't even, like, even when you're preparing to call races, like, okay, I got the list, I know who's here, this is favorites, and you kind of study the right people. But like 50% of the time, someone that you didn't do as much prep as you needed to on wins the race, and you're like,
or the favorite dropped out at the last second.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, I think you have to create consistency, and if you had like a tour, even if it's like 4 stops, but you get the same field or very similar field, maybe you shift up and down events, you can change things up that way. But just create consistency and have people to root for.
I saw someone say on Twitter that they could have held that meet the day after the California State meet. So then you have all these kids that are there and in town. And I don't know if that would work out for that venue. I have no idea. But I thought that's a really good idea. If we could have one in conjunction across the US, like maybe it's just 4 meets. And not everybody could go to all of them, obviously, because they'd probably be within a few weeks. But you have these state meets or something that's bringing a bunch of athletes there. And then you let them have their glory. And maybe some of the professionals give them their medals, hang out with them. And then the next day they get to watch them race. And so I feel like there's I'm not an event planner. As you pointed out, I have all these ideas, but then I'm like, can someone do that for me? But
I don't think I've said that, but okay.
Okay. You were like, you get it really close, but you don't quite get over the finish line, which is so true. But I just feel like there are all these opportunities where we could get more eyeballs on the professional athletes and the people that are going to be really inspired and want to follow along and potentially become the next great distance pole vaulter thrower. I just feel like, why aren't we doing that?
It is fascinating that our sport, like you can talk to so many people like, oh, I ran track in high school. Like that's such a common thing to hear. Like, how do we lose them? Like it's the easiest thing to create a league or have run clubs. Like how do we lose people out of high school or college? And then they kind of like, you hear a lot of people will come back into it later, but how can you retain those people in that weird space when you're exiting and, you don't have a place to run anymore. You're like, I'm not on a team, so this isn't as fun. You keep them in the activity, and then those are really like, you probably just lose fans at that time too, like potential fans at least.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I never ran boulder as a serious athlete ever.
Looks so hard.
It is hard. And it's like a brutal final hill. Yeah. But I do think that's something that they've proven works really well. You have these people that go out, 40,000 people ran it, and then they pack the stadium. And not just them, but their spouses, their parents, their family members are in the stadium to cheer them on as they come in. And then you bring out the pros, and the pros get to be rock stars. And there has to be a way we can translate that idea to track and field. If somebody wants to call me up, I'll give you all my ideas. I just feel like there's a way there to translate this. And it's sad to me that like we see Drake on TV and it's empty, or the LA meet and it's pretty much empty, or the meet in New York and it's empty. And it's like, what are we doing wrong that we're not getting bodies into that stadium?
You have to trick them in there.
Yeah, trick them in there.
This was an event for you. Nope, it's actually something for you to watch. And then
let them feel like they're a part of it somehow, though, right? Yeah. Like in Boulder, everyone wants to stay because they're like, I just ran that. Now I get to see the pros run it. Like, make them feel a part of it. Whoever the great idea people are who are going to do this.
A 5K that finishes with a lap on the track, and then you usher them into the stands, and then you just have to lock the doors.
No, I'm totally serious. I actually think that's a really good idea. Yeah. You have to sell food there. But like Boulder has this, like they get snacks in their bags. I looked over, Colt ran it, and I look over, he's like slamming a Pepsi, eating two Reese's peanut butter cups. He's like, I don't know if I really want this apple. Do you want it? I'm like, can you please eat that apple? Can you please want? Yeah. Well. But like they have food so people can like eat, so they're not like starving trying to get out of there. And so I don't know. I feel like it could be really cool.
Yeah, I think that is way more enticing than being like, we'll have a beer garden and a band. But like that's not even part of the appeal of like that wouldn't, I can go to a brewery on Friday. I can go to a live show. Like those things are so different. Like give me something that's similar, much like road racing, where like we're covering the same distance or we both qualified the same way. Like this thing appeals to me. And then, oh yes, I will watch that as well. And now maybe I become more invested in this thing. But yeah, like I just stand alone, like, yeah, let's have betting. Like I can download a app for that. It's not going to get me to go. Yeah. Like what's going to get people to go? Something similar to what you're doing. And those are the people that are going to stay and watch because they're mildly interested if they're going to participate in the activity of it.
Yeah. Okay. I have one last thing that I want to talk about because I told you before we got on the call, I'm like all hot and bothered by it.
I'm nervous.
No, I know. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to offend anyone. But I'm really disappointed in the way we highlight high school boys versus high school girls. And last night there was this Festival of Miles where I was just sort of following it on the media on social. And, they were awesome races. The boys ran so fast. There were 4 high school boys in one race that went under 4 minutes. It's amazing. But I just assumed, because I didn't look at their website, that it was just a boys' event. Like an event build to see how fast you get to the 4-minute mile. And then my old CU teammate, Billy Nelson, put on social that his daughter ran 4:53 there in the mile. And I was like, wait, there's girls there? So then I go and look, and sure enough, there was just as many girls races but the usual suspects where I promise you high school kids go to get their running news, didn't even mention those races. Didn't even mention it. Had posted videos of the boys, which they deserve, right? Like this isn't to take away from the boys, but nothing, not results about the girls, definitely not an interview or anything like that. And I lost my mind last night and I'm still losing it today. And so I don't really know what I want you to say here, but just, I feel like I wish everyone would accept, we get it. We get that the 4-minute barrier is a magical number, but it's not that hard to translate what that is for girls. And, I had someone on Twitter saying like, but it's not the right number. And I'm like, so you're telling girls and women that like we don't matter as much because we don't have this special number.
It's not round enough.
It's not round enough. Yeah, like we can't do math. So I don't know. I don't want to drag you into anything that you don't want to say, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Take down the clock.
Yes.
Let the kids race.
Yes.
I don't know. That's probably not a solve because boys, like everyone, like they want to break 4. It's cool. That's the whole thing. But I mean, honestly, it's not what it used to be.
No, it's not.
I mean, track and field news was like, and that's not a knock. It's still really
it's not running, a knock.
But let them race. Let's just let them race and take down the clock and be excited about the winners.
Yes. And this is my little message for the people who hype track and field and do a really good job, but really fail high school girls. Someday you're going to have a daughter or a niece or a wife or a sister, and they are going to be like, why in the hell did you not mention the girls who were all running out there just as hard and were all running just as comparably phenomenal races? Think about other people. You have to see it to believe it and to want it. And I just feel like we're doing a really big disservice to high school girl runners. And that's my soapbox. I'm going to step down unless you have anything to add.
I do. Do you have the girls' results? The top heat?
I have it from the top heat. Yeah.
Yeah. Open that sucker up.
Okay.
And let's read them.
All right. Oh, I love this.
Unless the names are really hard to read, and then well,
they probably are, but we're just gonna go for it. I'm gonna tell you them.
Okay. And put up the when we're done, we'll hold it up to the screen so you can see them on YouTube.
Now there was a girl named Tatum. I can't think of her last name right now, who ran in the pro race and ran 4:37.
Dang.
That is faster than a sub-4. Just saying. Okay.
That's amazing.
But here we go. The top 9 in the fastest heat. Charlotte Bell ran 4:41.33. Samantha Humphreys ran 4:41.93. Leah Steffens ran 4:42.19. Stella Kermes ran 4:42.9. Peyton No ran 4:43.37. Allison Ince ran 4:43.67. Abby Faith Cheeseman ran 4:44.59. Olivia Cieslak ran 4:45.62. And I have to imagine 9th place was Nicole Humphreys. I have to imagine she's sisters with Samantha Humphreys because they're from the same school. She ran 4:46.86. So that is 9 girls under 4:46 or faster.
And that's such a close race. Like
that is a close race.
That's a good race. I wish
we could get. We're separated by like a second and a half.
Wish we could get like video and put it on the YouTube and be like, "Hey, come watch the recap here." But everyone should look it up and go watch if that's available. Watch the end. Like that's something that I'm like, oh, I'll find that and watch the finish.
Yes, and I think at the Festival of Miles, I think that they do have that kind of stuff up on their website. So thank you for asking that. That was awesome. Let's give them a little shout out. And that's not to take away from what the boys did because they were awesome. But there were girls at that meet. And they ran awesome,
and that's some fast running. What was your mile PR in high school?
5 minutes. 5:00.9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dang.
What about you?
I think I ran 4:56.
That's so fast.
I think California is sub 5 or die.
My little sister, I was in college, but I went to the state meet for her last state meet, which would have been 2000. She destroyed the field and ran 4:56. And I remember being like, oh my, because I had never seen a high school girl run sub 5 before. But yeah, California puts out some good times because you guys have to.
We do. The state meet there is insane because it's no divisions. So it's just like, if you can make the final, you're really pretty good. And then winning a state championships, like super hard.
That sounds very intense, but also amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it gets kids ready for the next level, or it burns them out.
Yeah. I thought 5 minutes, like, we don't need to talk about my high school career, but like that was a huge barrier, I thought, when I was in high school. And I know that things are different with technology and stuff, but when I see a girl running 4:37 or 4:41,
that's insanity.
and like a bunch, not just one, right? Like we just saw 10 girls, if you count the girl who was in the pole race, 10 girls 4:46 or faster at one meet.
Are they all from the same area, or are they bring them in?
No, they're from all over.
Country?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we gave them a little shout out, and I feel good about it.
I'll look when I tweet this out or put it on the IG. I'm going to find a link to the race. That'll be my contribution.
I love that. Good job. I'll retweet you.
Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts? I think we aired our grievances, but anything else you want to say?
No, I think it was a good discussion about it. And, obviously there's not going to be immediate answers. And I feel like you're getting conversations from all over. And there's part of it's getting organized too, like getting people who are passionate and frustrated. I mean, like, let's get these ideas together and let's change some things. And so it's not just talking about it. That's like the next step. But yeah, good for us for engaging in the talking.
We started it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
And then maybe someone more organized will be like, okay, let's pull these together and do something.
I like that. And we're happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. We have consulting fee, but whatever.
Well, we might waive it. We might. It's for high school, but not for anything else.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Des.
Thank
That's
you.
a wrap.
Fun one.
All right. Catch you later.